While the rest of the world was focused on dock worker strikes, there was another huge strike happening in the women's sports world, the rebellion of college women's volleyball teams over men and girls sports. Plus, Family Foundation fights for the freedom of counselors and their clients to have biblically centered conversations about sexuality. Welcome to Speak Up, Virginia, equipping you to speak up on the life, family, and freedom issues that matter most to you. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Candi Cushman, with our president, Victoria Cobb. Well, welcome, everyone. Glad to have you with us for Speak Up, Virginia. And, I'm just going to get one thing out of the way before we get going here. If you notice this huge, obnoxious structure thing, I don't know what you want to call it, on my hand.
It looks like you wrapped it very thoroughly.
It's self-wrapped. That's why it looks like this. Yes, this is a self-induced injury. I was rushing, smashed my hand brutally in a door.
Car door? I feel like car doors happen a lot in our house.
The back door of my home.
Okay, well,
yeah.
I don't know if that's better or worse than a car door.
I feel like it felt worse. But anyway, yeah, that's where we're at. So, yeah, I'm going to be like this today.
It's okay. I've had, when I played basketball, it was almost every season I would you either jam a finger or break a finger pretty much every season of basketball. So my kids have done better than I did, actually. So we haven't had quite as many. Timothy's got a broken finger right now. He's playing baseball with it somehow. I
think you might be more immune to this. Yeah. Like, I tried to type something for you, and everywhere there's supposed to be a comma, there's a period, because apparently this is the finger that types commas.
That's good. We have other editors. If anything goes out, we'll just make sure the commas get switched to, or the period. I guess it would be the periods get switched back to commas. Yeah. Interesting.
It was funny. But let's get into our real topics today, and you can just ignore this monstrosity. But I did want to talk about something that you might have missed in the news because all the attention has been on, the VP debate a few days ago and the dock worker strike that we got through and all of that.
And the war. I mean, we got a lot in the news.
There's a lot, yes. Now I feel like I need to list everything.
No, I mean, it's been a very busy news cycle.
You might have missed another headline that I feel like actually is very key. And that is that there is this rebellion happening among college women's volleyball teams. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so apparently San Jose State's women's volleyball team has, as at least to the point of this taping, has been undefeated in their conference, in the Mountain West Conference. But it turns out that may be because they actually have a biological male on their front line of their volleyball team. And so, I mean, I find this very interesting, just super timely, because we just had this whole conversation at our gala with Bethany Hamilton was there, and she was talking about we need more people standing up, speaking up, and it sounds like there's some schools refusing to play. And so we're starting to get that.
Yeah, this situation seems to be a catalyst for people coming out, maybe taking some action. And, you can understand why a lot of these schools are saying they aren't going to play, because when you look at this player is one of the tallest on the team. According to another teammate, the teammate on the actual team we're talking about here, a fellow player, they're saying this person can spike a ball up to 80 miles per hour. So that gets into some fairness issues.
I mean, we in our school, we literally just had a hand that was broken from a very hard spiked ball, then broken in multiple places. And that was just girls on girls, like in high school. I mean, there's a reality. It says power actually really matters in volleyball, in spiking, and it would be no surprise if you ever go, just for example, my daughter played kind of on a national volleyball travel team, and the tournaments would have some of them, most of them were women one weekend and men the other weekend, but sometimes you'd have a massive convention center full of, and on one side there'd be the women's sports, and then on the other side, if you look at the difference, same age, of what the volleyball looks like with the guys and what the volleyball looks like with the girls, it's not even in the same category because of the power. When you get to high school level and certainly college level, you're going to have a huge difference.
Well, and I was seeing, in these articles that they were saying the men's volleyball net is 7 inches higher. Like for college volleyball, it's 7 inches higher. So here you have a male playing with a net against other teams that is a lot lower.
Everybody knows in volleyball, it's about height. It's about your vertical jump because you're literally trying to get up over a net. And so it's absurd to think that this could be sort of parallel or that this doesn't have some kind of significant impact. So what's interesting is this conference is like 11 teams. And so 3 of them, I guess, have ducked out. Is that right? 3? So
We're up to 4
We're
now.
at 4 now.
Yeah.
So you're getting to the point where almost half the conference is saying we're not going to play. That's big. That's when it starts, to your point, like that's when there starts to be impact. I mean, if only one school did this, we still need that school to do that because it starts a wave. But they did. They were courageous and contagious. And the next school said, we're not going to play. And so I think that's a big deal.
At the time we were taping this, we were up to 4.
Yeah.
And that's what it's going to take if we really care about girls' safety and fairness in sports. This is not going to stop till people start taking a stand like this and saying, we can't do this.
Well, I also noticed on the roster, this individual had won Player of the Week about 2 weeks ago. And I sat there and thought, against all the other, I mean, if you're doing an 80 mile an hour spike, you're going to get Player of the Week and someone else is not going to get Player of the Week. So it's just the little things, but they matter.
And I want to clarify, this is not about singling someone out because of this issue in their life or whatever, hardship they may have experienced. This is about is the consequences on women around them and the entire sport. People's ability to win scholarships, to, you're talking about most favored player.
Yeah,
like
that's just an award. I mean, it's just an honor, but someone else is not going to get that honor, right?
To opportunity.
I mean, there are girls playing college sports who are actually aiming to be on the U.S. Olympic team. I mean, that's real. And so, again, these things do matter.
Well, I'm going to just kind of list these colleges that at the time of this taping had said they were canceling their matches. So it was Boise State, University of Wyoming, Southern Utah, and Utah State all forfeited games. And I guess that means they're taking a loss.
Yeah, I assume so. I hope if enough do it, this conference says, wait a second, we've got a problem, and it actually sort of undoes the rankings of the season. I mean, it really could begin the unraveling of we can't have, because it's going to affect people's willingness to want to play in that conference, right? So it's going to affect recruiting. I mean, all these things go down the line. And so I'm hoping that because there's been 4 teams, the conference is going to have to take a hard look at, are we going to have teams in our conference that choose to have unfair play?
Well, to Bethany's point about more people needing to speak up, we have seen also individuals, including this very courageous young woman on the San Jose team that is playing with this person. So I think this would be taking her a lot of courage. That's hard
because it's a teammate, right? You're bonded and it's going to become awkward.
And she said their best, all the team players are best friends. It is hard. She talked about that. But I think she's a co-captain on the team.
Okay.
And she did this exclusive interview with AdKey, and she talked, it was a written interview, so I don't have it to play.
Okay.
But she talked about how the school was apparently keeping this a secret, not only from these outside teams competing with them, but from the players themselves. Mm-hmm. And that was super awkward for her because she was actually assigned to room with this person. Mm-hmm. So if you can imagine the position that would put her in. And let's just listen to a clip from AdKey talking about the interview they did with her.
It's been this secret, it was a secret within San Jose State. I spoke to one of the San Jose State players. She is a senior. She's a co-captain on the team. She's the setter. Her name is Brooke. And basically, after it became public knowledge, they were told, the teammates were told that you shouldn't talk about this. They were not given any sort of ultimatum or punishment or anything like that, as far as I know, but they did guilt trip the players, essentially saying that it is not your job to tell Blair's story. That's Blair's job to tell her story. So the way that Brooke said that she felt was that the school was protecting Blair without giving her teammates, without giving Brooke and her teammates the opportunity to really express their concerns with the situation. So it was like the protection of one person at the expense of the rest of the team and of the opponents as well. So this whole thing has been just like kind of kept a secret. And even now, people are really afraid to talk about it, which is why I think that the work we're doing at OutKick and the fact that Brooke has been brave enough to come forward, join the lawsuit against the NCAA with icons, Riley Gaines, and 18 other athletes. I think that's really important because it is something that people are really afraid to talk about. We see it on OutKick. We see that we get people who are calling us bigots and hateful and things like that, but that's not the case. Bigotry, and it's not bigotry, it's biology.
I mean, I love this reporter picked right up on this thing that it is not bigotry. It is just biology, that this isn't about how people feel. This is about the real differences that are physical and that manifest themselves in sports, or on the court.
Yeah. And I think this woman that's speaking out courageously, her name is Brooke Slesser. So we're probably going to be hearing a lot more about this. And she has joined several other women in a lawsuit. I think this is interesting because the lawsuit makes the case that the NCAA knowingly violated Title IX because, they're allowing biological males to play on women's teams. And I just think that's a whole interesting turnabout of events because the Biden administration has been using Title IX to try to force this on schools.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And I think there's been pressure on the NCAA by others, Riley Gaines, and there's been a basketball player that's been really vocal. And there's been, if you remember, the representative that we brought in from Idaho who helped pass girls' sports was a basketball coach. And they've been putting pressure on NCAA to stop this. And so I think this kind of adding this lawsuit in there, I think eventually they're going to have to address this. And it's just been everybody's kind of waiting to see what they're going to do.
Well, good for these girls and good for the teams that took some action on this. And we'll see what happens. We'll give you the updates. Well, there's been other big news on the transgender front right here in Virginia, and this is actually the news created by our legal team. Tell us what's going on with that.
Yeah, we just launched with our Founding Freedoms Law Center, a lawsuit, and it's really getting at the heart of religious freedom issues and also freedom of speech. And it's basically just looking at the right of counselors to be able to counsel their patients in the way a patient wants to receive care. It's basically making sure that kids who are struggling around their gender or their sexuality can actually receive the kind of talk therapy that they're looking for.
Yeah, so this is all about, what I like the way you talk about, this is fighting counseling censorship or fighting for freedom in counseling. Because if there is a kid that wants help or a teen that wants help aligning their sexual feelings with their biological gender. If they want help, they're seeking that. Maybe they're a Christian.
Yeah, this is the thing. Every day, these kids are able to get help going, the whole culture is pushing them towards homosexuality. They're pushing them towards changing their physical body to be a different gender than what God has given them in their biological parts. The whole culture is pushing that way. But what if a kid says, I feel this going on, but I don't want to go that direction? Can I restore my feelings to my either God-given biology or to same heterosexual attraction instead of same-sex attraction? Where do I go to get help as a kid?
And I think that's so important because we hear this all the time from these people like Chloe Cole giving their testimony, and you hear them saying, I was being told there was only one option, that there was one path for me, and right now, it's against the law for them to hear another option, right, from their counselor.
It is state by state, but in Virginia in 2020, they passed a law that literally said you cannot do what they call it uses the word conversion therapy, which is a real attempt at trying to mislead people into what it is about because they will then define it in ways, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But bottom line is you can't just have a conversation as a licensed counselor with a child if it isn't sending them the direction culture wants you to send them.
Well, what about adults? Is it also outlawed for if adults want to go in there?
The law is specific to minors, but I would say that's where this is playing out the most. This is where kids are figuring out their sexuality. This is where it is really that age of sort of coming to adulthood where they really need the most help.
Yeah. Well, again, I just think that is so fundamental what we're talking about here with free speech and religious freedom, because it's both parties involved in counseling. It's someone's freedom to get the counseling they actually want, and the counselor's freedom to be able to help them when they ask for it, right?
Yeah, this is the thing. We say counseling is client-driven, meaning a client says, this is the outcome I'm looking for. I want to feel at peace about myself, or I want to, change my thinking. And then the counselor's supposed to try to help you you work through to be able to achieve that. And so, yeah, it's remarkable that we're at a place where we've said, well, you can do that in every other area. If somebody walks in and they have struggles in other areas, you can help them get to their outcomes. But if this is the struggle they're having and this is the outcome they want, you can't do that.
Well, you know what? There's been times in my life when I've looked for a counselor and I wanted a biblically based counselor.
Correct.
On every issue.
Yep.
That's the framework I wanted. This interferes with that freedom for me to find that.
I would say especially Christian kids are going to find themselves without help, because Christian kids who want to say, look, I am struggling, and yet I want the solution to be what Jesus wants my solution to be.
Yeah.
I want to get there. And these counselors are, there are all across Virginia, there are Christian counselors, and that is the way that they counsel. They help Christians find the outcomes through Christ. And it really is a discrimination on religious freedom in that way.
Let's talk about conversion therapy for a moment, because, let me just explain to our audience here that there was a press conference. Victoria did a press conference with our legal counsel, Josh and Michael, and, they were explaining to the media this whole case, and we introduced the people that they are defending, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I was astounded, and, you would think I wouldn't be at this point, but I was still astounded because it was so over the top at just the outright lies in the media coverage on that press conference. And to me, one of the biggest of those lies was this narrative that this is about forcing people to do something that come into the counseling room. No one is talking about forcing anyone to do anything in this case.
It's not about conduct at all. It's not about doing anything. It's about speech. And that, I think our attorneys tried to make that really clear in the press conference. We're talking about talking to people, not about, and that, and this is the thing, these reporters know better. They know better. I had one reporter after the press conference come up and ask that question quietly, like, are we talking about stuff like shock therapy or other weird thing? And it was very clear. I was like, no, this is about talk therapy. And the reason the reporters know it is because the history of the bill. Many of these reporters were there when this passed in 2020. And what happened when it passed is they brought forward this bill with this term, conversion therapy. So whenever a law has a term, it's like, what does that mean? You have to have a definition. And so they would bring people to testify that would tell these terrible stories of bad therapy. And they weren't talking about talking. They were talking about ways that therapists tried to help them. And they sounded awful. And so our conservatives said, okay, can we create a law that just bans shock therapy? And they would not let them define the bill to not be about talking. We really tried to say, okay, if there's a conduct within therapy, if there's a methodology that is not about talking, then can we ban that? And they didn't want to do it because they wanted it to be about the conversation.
Yeah.
They don't want the conversation.
And just to be clear here, this discussion was about their bill, the left's bill,
yes,
where they are saying they want to ban conversion therapy, and they refuse to make clear,
yes, that they're not.
We're not. Yeah, that we're not just talking. They didn't want to allow room for free speech conversation.
Correct.
Yeah,
that was the point of the bill, because we could have eliminated all the other stuff and said we'll ban all those anything that's not talk, and they would not.
Which, in my opinion, those things are terrible, and that would have actually helped people to ban a lot of those things. But
that was the point the conservatives were trying to make in the committee.
Yeah,
they knew what they were after.
And that's the thing with the left, is they don't actually want conversation. You have to you have to adhere completely, embrace their orthodoxy, especially on the LGBTQ. There's no room for discussion, and that applies across the board, including in the counseling room. So they actually, we talk about not interfering with a woman and her doctor.
This is about interfering with a counselor and their patient.
Right.
I mean, really, this is what this is about.
I think it's so key because it is about a patient. A lot of us have, as I've talked about, had instances where we want biblical counseling. It's horrible to make make regulations where people cannot go and get biblical counseling voluntarily, and that counselor have the freedom to give them what they're asking for. I just think that's atrocious, and that's what we have.
I mean, it feels very much like a direct attack on religious freedom, because if there are Christian kids and they're saying, I'm struggling with these feelings, with this this whatever's going on in my mind, and I want to, guess what, conform my thinking, not to the pattern of this world, but to him. If I want to get my thinking square, I want to go to a counselor that's going to help me. They're being denied biblical help. And so, yes, it is absolutely, I think, a violation of religious freedom on the counselor's part. It's a violation of their free speech. Just because they're counselors, they don't lose their right to talk about things with other individuals. And you'll hear reporters sometimes refer to this whole, and they'll bucket it all together, and then they'll use the word fraud. It's a fraud. And there was a reference to that in a question with the reporters. I think there was an article that referenced it. And what they're saying when they say that is, we don't think it's possible to change.
Right.
Therefore, any conversation about change must be fraudulent because you are what you are. Except we know that's not true. There are so many individuals out there who have had same-sex attraction and who have, in many cases, they've come to a saving faith of Jesus and he's helped them now, but they are living as heterosexuals in a family. They're happily married, and they would say, there are people who would say, I no longer have even the same-sex attraction. Those people exist. You can have your opinion about them, but they exist. The media doesn't want to talk about that as if it doesn't exist. And it's the same thing as we know on gender issues. We know there are people out there just like Chloe Cole. I mean, we mentioned her earlier. She is an example where you have someone who had confusion around her gender feelings not lining up with her physical body. So what did she do as a kid? She got funneled down this path that our culture funnels people down, where she ends up going all the way to changing her body to line up with her feelings. Yeah. And now she regrets that. And now she is in a class, and there are many people, and they're more and more, they're casually being considered or referred to themselves as detransitioners, people who want to go backwards with their bodies. And I think they would say, if I could have gotten help around how I felt, I would have never had to go down this really tragic road.
She said that. Yeah. So I think the word change is key here, because one thing I noticed when I'm looking at this law that they pushed through, if you look at how things are being defined, you look at, they have change. That's the bad guy in here, is the word change. So again, not only do they not want conversation, but they want to tell everybody that change is not allowed. It's actually criminalized. Like if you try to help someone, or as you said, in this case, it's targeted at teens, which is the key part of this. And Victoria, I just want to go back to what you were saying about that this is an attack on the gospel.
Yeah, I mean, and I think even the use of the word conversion, Josh Hetzler, our attorney, talks about this very well. The word conversion therapy, which is the term they use. When we as believers think about conversion, what do we think about? We think about how we were once sinners, confused, overcome with whatever, and Jesus came into our life, and we were converted into the family of God, which changed all of our thinking, right? And the idea that is what this is running right up against. It is a direct attack on the gospel, and honestly, a direct attack on counseling in general, because nobody goes to a counselor thinking, I want to stay exactly the same. I mean, I don't know why you'd go to counseling if you don't want some kind of change in your life. I know that's a really basic thing, but it's true.
It's so closely related when you think spiritually. And well, first we have psychological, spiritual, mental components. We are multi-factor human beings. We need help in all those areas. Yes. And when you think spiritually, you think about the freedom that we needed from the chains that were around us.
Yes.
We both psychologically, mentally, physically, God has released those chains in our own lives. We all have testimonies to that effect. And here you have Christian counselors that want the freedom to work with Christian clients. Please tell us a little bit more about the clients in this case, because I think that's a really great part of this.
Yeah, so we're representing two licensed professional counselors who happen to also be married, Dr. John and Janet Raymond, and they are owners of a counseling center, and they are licensed through Virginia. That's what's at stake here, is their license. That is really, if they were to violate this law, they'd be summoned to the Board of Counseling, and they would lose their license. So that's like the fundamental sort of disciplinary situation. So it's their livelihood on the line. They, prior to this law, regularly counseled young people who had many struggles in life, but also in that list of things that young people came to them for were struggles around gender and sexuality. And they basically had to stop counseling minors. And here's what's been happening generally is that folks that counseled children who might have counseled in this direction if a child said, I want this, I want biblical counseling in some way around this. They have generally stopped counseling children altogether. And the reason you'll hear them say that is a lot of these counselors will say, I don't know what's going to come up in a counseling session with a minor. I don't know what they're going to say and what kind of counseling they want until we're way into it. And they know they could run afoul of this law. And so in many cases, it has left children with fewer counseling options, period, because people like the Raymonds have literally kind of shut down that type of practice, that type of business.
That is so true, because anyone that's either been in counseling or had a child in counseling knows it does not start out, it doesn't end where it started, and oftentimes issues that you don't even know are there are need to be dealt with. So absolutely, I can see where that would.
And also, ironically,
it's a chilling effect.
It is. 100%. And ironically, what it ends up, those that push this law would hate this effect. But when there has been no ability for kids to get professional counseling, the only place that they've been able to go is their own pastor, if they have one. So they've been getting spiritual care, but actually not professional counseling. And really, in many cases, you're looking for both, and that's the thing. But this is the challenge. So these clients are basically saying, we want our business back. And the law took it away unjustly, unconstitutionally, and we want it back.
Well, let's just listen to a brief clip of Dr. Raymond sharing why he decided to go forward with this lawsuit.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. John Raymond, and beside me is my lovely wife and business partner, Janet Raymond. For a lot of years, we've been able to help many individuals find peace and wholeness through counseling from a biblical worldview, including those struggling with issues involving sexual trauma and identity. But this law at issue now poses a direct challenge to our ability to provide the counseling that some people are seeking. We believe that the power of God through Jesus Christ and Holy Spirit can and does set people free from the struggles that burden them, and that there is no challenge that He cannot help a person with. But this law denies that reality, and prevents counselors like us from sharing the truth of God's Word that brings life and healing. As Christians, we feel compelled to push back on this government overreach on matters that should be left between counselors and their clients.
Well, I got to say, I just love the courage of this beautiful couple. I mean, people got to understand how much bravery it takes. Most counselors, I would say, feel like they have too much to lose to jump into this. But they are on the line here because they have such a love for their clients and the teens that they want to help. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we, in addition to representing our clients, gird them with prayer because it does take a certain courage. But I think they've got such a great potential outcome of this case. We really believe that this is a case where we know this is unconstitutional. The U.S. Supreme Court basically said that in an opinion in a court case. They basically said, look, there's no such thing as professional speech. You can't ban a type of speech. So we believe there's great law there. And then in Virginia, we just got a great decision on another case that's going to help this. So Peter Vlaming, we've talked about him before on this show, but a teacher who got in trouble, lost his job for not using pronouns. What's relevant about this is not necessarily the fact set being the same, but the decision that came from the Virginia Supreme Court in Peter Vlaming's case literally said that not only is there the First Amendment, which is what we all think of when we think of freedom of religion, freedom of speech, but they said Virginia's Constitution and our laws are actually stronger than even federal protections around this. And so this is a case that's going in state court, and so it will be our state law that they can stand on and say, yes, we have a right to have free speech. We have a right to have our faith and for a client of faith to receive counseling.
So you feel like that fact set then will help strengthen this case as far as the arguments go?
I do.
Okay.
I think it will be very difficult to make a case that defies what's in our state constitution.
All right. Well, what's the next step in this?
Well, yeah, it's filed in Henrico Circuit Court, and so we will it'll go step by step, through, and I imagine it'll be challenged and all of that. It's an interesting scenario just because laws are defended by our Attorney General. So the next step is we're finding out what does our Attorney General do in this moment. We have reason to believe that he actually is sympathetic because he voted against this bill when he was in the legislature. So, but it's his job to defend the law. So we're waiting to find out how is this actually going to play out.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we have the Attorney General that we do have.
It's a good start.
Yeah. Well, I got to think that people are so encouraged when they listen to us and hear what our legal team is doing. And our legal team is 3 years old?
It's very new, Founding Freedoms Law Center, and they're doing a fantastic job. And this is a big case for them to take on. This is a big deal. We need this law overturned. And so we're really proud that they've put this together with these plaintiffs are going to be able to get help.
So not only do we ask for your prayers for this, but if people want to support what the legal team is doing, how could they do that?
Yeah, they can give a gift. You can either give it directly to Founding Freedoms Law Center, or you can just put it to the Family Foundation and just let us know in the memo that you want it to go towards the Law Center. And we'll make sure they're well resourced, because again, we do represent these clients free of charge to the client always.
That's right.
And so it is people's donations that make these cases possible.
Your donations make those cases possible, and I think that's awesome when you see who we're able to help. So just look for Founding Freedoms Law Center on our website if you want to learn about more of their cases or help out. Well, thanks for joining us for Speak Up Virginia. Remember, we are stronger when we speak together. And if you want to help us get the word out about what's going on to more people, share the playlist, Speak Up Virginia playlist on YouTube. And if you like what you're hearing, give us that 5-star review on the other platforms like Apple and Spotify if you're listening on there. We love having you. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.